Hello and welcome to the channel. Zach D Productions here, and I'm here for a ranking video for you guys. This is actually a re-ranking, an updated ranking, and I do realize that this is my first video since Christmas, so I just want to say Merry Christmas to everyone. Hopefully you all had a good one. So today we're going to talk about the band Red. Yeah, that's right. Now Red was one of the first bands I ever got into. I've been a fan for many years. I want to say I got into them since 2012. I believe that's the year I got into Red. And they're definitely one of the first bands that come to mind when I think of bands that I was basically obsessed with back in high school. So, of course, like with any ranking, we're going to go through the discography, go from worst to best based on my opinion, of course. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do an updated ranking for Red is because since the last time I did a Red ranking video on this channel, they did release a new album since then, which of course was Declaration. So without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. So at the bottom, as my least favorite, this one might come off as a shock to some people because I don't know, I might get some heat for this one. I don't know, because I know that this album does have its fan base. It could just be biased fans or whatever, but I don't know. But nonetheless, as my least favorite, what's coming in last, it's got to be their latest album, Declaration. Now, if you were to ask me to do this ranking, last year or so, this album would be a little bit higher, I think. But I just got to be honest with you guys, and I do got to be honest with myself. This is my least favorite Red album. It definitely is. After really thinking about their discography, which albums hold up better than others, of course. This album, it really did not hold up well at all. I actually have quite a few problems with this album. For one, they've released way too many songs before the album's release, which definitely had an effect on the album's hype. They basically spoiled half the album. And also, the production. I think this has some of Red's worst production on any of their albums. I don't know if that has to do with them going independent this time around. I hope I'm wrong about that, but I don't know if that has something to do with it. But the production on this album, needless to say, is not that great. And this album, to me, also just kind of sounds more of the same. Nothing too groundbreaking. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. This album honestly sounds like a Beauty and Rage B-Sides compilation album. That's just kind of how I think of it anyways. And the album does seem kind of lazy. Even if you're a hardcore Red fan, if they're your favorite band of all time, you have to admit this is their most lazy album. And there's just no other way around it. That's just personally what I believe. I think this is their laziest album. And it also doesn't help that there's no ballads on the album. Red, they do an excellent job with ballads, so how can you not add a ballad on this album? It's just crazy to me, man. But yeah, so as you can see, I definitely do have quite a few problems with this album. But would I say that this is a bad album? No, not necessarily. Even though I think it's their weakest, it's still not a bad album. I think the album is just good at best. It's not a great album. I would say it's a good album. But some of my favorites on the album would have to be Cauterize, Sever, Only Fight, which is kind of different. Really the only different thing that they've done on this album. And From the Ashes, I think, is another favorite of mine. I really do like that song too. But then you have songs like Infidel and The Victim, which I honestly can't remember these songs at all. I honestly, they're not really in my head at all or anything, because they're just so forgettable for me. They're not bad songs, but they're just kind of forgettable. That's just my opinion, though. But yeah, Declaration, I mean, yeah, some people might argue, oh, it's a return to form, but I think that's kind of the problem. Like I said before, it's kind of just more of the same. I don't know, but that's just my opinion, though. The album doesn't hold up that well for me. So, yeah, I believe this is their weakest album. And, because of this album, I'm probably not going to be excited for Red's next album if they have a new album coming out or whatever. I'll be honest, I'll probably not be that excited for it after this. Unless somehow they can, redeem themselves, then so be it. But until then, I don't really have much high hopes for the future of Red. But yeah, Declaration, I think it's their weakest. Now, next up, I think my next choice is pretty obvious, especially if you've seen my last Red ranking video. But next, I gotta go with their album Gone. And some people might have this last in their ranking, and understandably so. And when Declaration came out, I would have had that album a little bit higher than this album, actually. But, at least this album, they tried something different. And that's what I can applaud them for regarding this album. At least they're trying something different. And I think that's what Red needs to do, for the next album. Yeah, this album, it's still one of their weakest. It's, still just kind of a good album. Again, not great, but just good, I would say. There are some good songs on here, though. Of course, like Losing Control. The title track, pretty good. Kind of poppy, accessible sounding, but, I don't mind it. Coming Apart, it's a pretty good ballad song, Fracture and Chasing Your Echo, AI, pretty good tracks. Singularity, take it or leave it, I guess, But Gone, it's decent. I think it's decent. Now, next, we have their album, Release the Panic. Now, I think most fans, if not at least a lot of fans, would have this album last. I personally don't understand why. I think this album is pretty darn good, actually. Now, sure, that might have to do with nostalgia, Sometimes nostalgia can do the talking sometimes when you rank albums. Nostalgia, you could say, does play a factor in this because, I saw them on this tour and, I was very excited for the album. I'm not going to lie. There are some good songs on the album, though. I can't deny that. The title track is pretty good. Hold Me Now. It's a decent ballad. It's not one of their best ballads or anything, but, I don't mind it. If We Only, which is probably my favorite song on the album. So Far Away, I've always really liked. Glass House, pretty good as well, but, yeah, pretty good album, I'd say. Definitely not as bad as some people make it out to be. If I had to make a list of albums that are not as bad as people make them out to be, this album would probably be up there. So, Release the Panic. Yeah, the album is a bit different, but you know what? Once again, at least they're trying something different. And I, again, applaud them for the experimentation that they were going for on both Release the Panic and Gone. But anyhow, next we got Until We Have Faces. And there's some people that I know that say that this is one of their weakest, and there's people that I know that say that this is one of their best. But I just remember being really into this album when I first got into Red. Really, I think all the songs on here are great. You really can't go wrong with anything on this album. From this point on, there's no bad song. From this album onwards, you're just getting absolutely solid material from start to finish. Now, I will say that there is an exception here, though. The only song I'm not too crazy about on this album is Best Is Yet to Come. Again, kind of another forgettable Red song for me. Not bad, but just kind of forgettable, And I've never been the biggest fan of it. Even back in the day, I've I've never been a big fan of it, and I'm still not a big fan of it. Easily my least favorite on the album. But to name favorites of mine, of course, Feed the Machine, one of their heaviest songs. Faceless, Let It Burn, Buried Beneath, Not Alone, Watch You Crawl. Hymn for the Missing, easily one of their best ballads. It's more emotional driven. Kind of a sad song. But yeah, I really dig this song too. I mean, I just really like the pianos and instrumentation and just the overall emotion in this song. It's just really great. But yeah, it's a good album. Again, besides the song Best Is Yet to Come, I think this album is great start to finish. Okay, so here we are at the top 3. Now, I'm sure a lot of you know what my top 3 is at this point. So, number 3, Of Beauty and Rage. And I think most people would say that this is one of their best. I mean, if you're a Red fan, chances are this is also in the top 3 for you as well. This album really does just do everything right, I think. And I remember when this album came out as well, I immediately bought the CD at day one when the album first came out. And when I first listened to it, I was absolutely mind blown by this album. Now, this is how you do a return to form. All right. I mean, Shadow and Soul, Darkest Part. I remember when Darkest Part came out as a single, I was just really, really stoked for this album after hearing that single, Fight to Forget, which is kind of an underrated Red song. Of These Chains, pretty good ballad song. Not my favorite of their ballads, but it is very good though. Falling Sky. Gravity Lies, one of the best Red songs, at least I would say. Pretty underrated as well. But yeah, I really dig this album. Now, yeah, you could argue that the album does have some filler, but honestly, I like every song on this album. I mean, if I had to choose a least favorite on the album, I'd maybe go with The Ever, but even that song is pretty good. So yeah, Of Beauty and Rage, definitely worthy of being in the top 3. So here we are at number 2. Now, before I even started recording this video, I was honestly tempted to place this album at number 1, but even though it's only at number 2, just know that it is a very, very close second to my number 1. I mean, when it comes to my top 2, not much separates them. Not at all. But at number 2, I gotta go with their debut album, End of Silence. And once again, if you're a Red fan, chances are this is also in the top 3 for you. I mean, if this album is not one of your favorites from Red, I mean, are you even a Red fan? You know, because obviously this is one of their most recognizable albums, if not probably their most recognizable album. And it does have the song that put them on the map as well, Breathe Into Me. It's a great song, but I can understand if people want to say it's overrated or overplayed or whatever. I can definitely understand that argument, but it's still a very good song. And I think the reason I was tempted to place this album at number 1 is because this does have some of my favorite songs from Red. Some of those being Let Go, easily one of their best songs. Already Over, which, if you didn't know, was one of my first Red songs. It was actually the song that got me into Red. Pieces. I mean, come on. What can I say about Pieces that hasn't already been said? It's probably their best ballad. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It's not only their best ballad, but probably one of the best Red songs. It's just excellent. Already Over Part 2 is kind of an interesting ballad as well. Break Me Down is pretty good. You know, very solid stuff. Very solid stuff. I mean, if you're into 2000s hard rock or alternative metal, you definitely got to check out this album. It's just really great. I mean, I pretty much got no complaints with it. So at number 1, I mean, I'm sure you guys already know what number 1 is for me at this point. So at number 1, I know a lot of people, a lot of Red fans would have this album at number 1, and for good reason. At number 1, I gotta go with their second album, Innocence and Instinct. I mean, once again, not much separates the top 2 albums for me, but I think this album is just more solid start to finish. And I do think that this album does have a better second half as well. I mean, really, I really like all the songs on this album. Some of my favorites on here would have to be Death of Me, Mystery of You. I absolutely love Mystery of You. That's another one of my favorite Red songs as well. Definitely great. Start Again, kind of an underrated song. Shadows, which was, of course, co-written by Ben from Breaking Benjamin. That's another one of my favorite songs from the band. And of course, Forever, another underrated Red song. Take It All Away, but yeah. Really great album for sure. I mean, this is their best album in my opinion. It's probably their darkest album too. If not this album, then probably Of Beauty and Rage is their darkest. I don't know. It's kind of a tie between the two. I'm not really sure. But of course, that can depend on who you ask. But yeah, Innocence and Instinct, really great album. I definitely recommend it. I can't recommend it enough, actually. But anyhow, that's my ranking for the band Red. Let me know what you guys think. It was really nice to be talking about Red again, you know, just doing a re-ranking, an updated ranking for Red. So let me know what you guys think. How would you rank the Red discography? So feel free to let me know. So with that being said, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day and take care.